Hello, I'm Esther Gido-Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Top U.S. officials urge the Israeli defense minister to abandon plans to invade the southern Gaza city of Rafah, where over 1 million Palestinian civilians are sheltering from war. Senegal's president-elect vows to fight corruption, rebuild institutions and unite the country as he prepares to assume office. We'll have a report from Dakar. And in our technology report, the United Nations General Assembly passes a resolution to establish a global agreement to develop trustworthy and secure artificial intelligence systems. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in the Middle East, where on Wednesday around 30 rockets were launched from Lebanon toward northern Israel, according to the Israeli military. Hezbollah is taking responsibility for the launches and says the attacks were in response to an Israeli airstrike on a paramedic center linked to the Lebanese Sunni Muslim group in South Lebanon that killed 7 of its members overnight. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that his government will not accept Hamas' quote, delusional conditions for a ceasefire in Gaza. The militant group rejected the latest truce proposal because it says Israel is ignoring the group's core demands, an end to the war and Israel's full withdrawal from Gaza Strip. Netanyahu also blasted Tuesday's United Nations Security Council resolution calling for a Gaza ceasefire that his country's top ally, the United States, chose not to block. He says the resolution is emboldening Hamas and he vows to move forward with the war. Israel has killed over 32,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry. The fighting has left much of the Gaza in ruins, displaced most of its residents, and driven 2.3 million to the brink of famine. The Israel-Hamas war is now in its 6th month. Top U.S. officials are urging Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to abandon plans to invade the southern Gaza city of Rafah, where over 1.4 million Palestinian civilians are sheltering from the war. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara reports.
At least 16 people were killed when a strike hit a residential building in Rafah on Monday, as Israel continues its military campaign by air on Gaza's southernmost city. Israel wants to go further with a planned ground offensive, but U.S. officials are imploring them not to.
The safety of the 1.5 million Palestinian civilians in Rafah is also a top priority for the United States. Now, we continue to share the goal of seeing Hamas defeated. So we'll discuss alternative approaches to target Hamas elements.
In his meeting with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also urged Israel to allow more humanitarian assistance amid a looming famine in Gaza. The U.S. message on aid in Rafah was conveyed to Gallant by other administration officials, including Secretary of State Antony Blinken and White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. It's unclear whether Israel will heed the warning. Gallant said he wants the U.S. to ramp up weapons transfer to Israel.
We will also discuss strategic issues and the important cooperation between our establishment, which will ensure Israel's military edge and capabilities.
The U.S. provides Israel with $4 billion a year in aid, including $3.3 billion that Israel must use to purchase U.S. weapons.
The best case scenario would be that if the U.S. actually did use its abundant leverage, both unilaterally and multilaterally, to try to bring about a ceasefire.
On Monday, the U.S. used its diplomatic leverage with an abstention at the UN that allowed the Security Council to adopt a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages held by Hamas. But so far, President Joe Biden has not indicated a willingness to condition military aid, despite protests calling him to end his support for Israel. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.
Pope Francis' health appears to have improved enough on Wednesday for him to comment on the war in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas war. The 87-year-old pontiff read out his comments in a pre-prepared text at his weekly audience as he appealed for peace in Ukraine and the Middle East.
Brothers and sisters, let us pray for peace. May the Lord give peace to the martyred Ukraine, which is suffering so much under bombardment, and also in Israel and Palestine. May there be peace in the Holy Land. May the Lord give us all peace as a gift of his Easter. I bless you all.
Pope Francis has been suffering off and on from bronchitis and the flu for more than a month, leading him to limit public speaking, cancel some meetings, and go to a Rome hospital for medical checks. Recovery efforts are underway Wednesday for the 6 construction workers who are presumed missing and dead after a cargo ship hit a pillar of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland, causing the structure to collapse. A radio dispatcher's warning that the massive ship had lost its steering capabilities alerted police, who managed to stop vehicle traffic over the bridge in both directions with only 90 seconds to spare. The bridge was an important link in the region's transportation infrastructure, and its collapse is expected to snarl commuter traffic and disrupt a vital shipping port. For more on the bridge collapse, let's go to VOA's Jackson Vunganyi, who is standing by live in Baltimore. Hello, Jackson. What exactly happened? How did the vessel ram into that bridge?
Hello. Hi, Esther. Good morning or good afternoon to our viewers. We're here in Baltimore, right outside of the Patapsco Bridge, on the banks of the Patapsco Bridge. This is being called the largest infrastructure disaster in Maryland history, and officials, like you said that 6 people remain unaccounted for following the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. As you can see in the background, it's a little foggy, it's also raining, but it will clear up. It does clear up once in a while, and you're able to see the bridge, and you see the remains of the metal and the ship that are still stuck in there. The investigations are still underway on what caused the crash. Some say that lights went off on the ship that was on its way to Sri Lanka. It's a Singaporean ship, and the lights went off. They sent out a Mayday or SOS to local police and fire department that set up roadblocks on the bridge so that people who were using the bridge around 1:30 in the morning were able to stop that traffic, and which they say is the reason why they were able to stop further death in this case. It's disastrous. 2 of them were saved from the water. Maryland Governor Westmore, who declared a state of emergency, says that the crew again did good in terms of calling for that Mayday earlier on. This bridge is used by over 35,000 people, and it was built in the 70s and serves the outermost crossing of the Baltimore Harbor.
Jackson, what's the status now of the operations and rescue as we speak?
So again, they're still still the investigations are still undergoing, and they have rescue operations, state and federal, trying to figure out where the 6 people who are still missing are. It's cold, rainy day, the water is freezing, so I can imagine that makes it tough for any rescue operations. But both state and federal agencies and institutions and capacities are being deployed here today to rescue or to save, to find the people that were lost.
Jackson, now what's the impact of the collapsed bridge in terms of, the people who use that bridge daily and others beyond, the people who live in Baltimore area? Yeah. Absolutely. It said over 8,000 jobs are affected here, and it is estimated that over $190 million of economic activity crosses this bridge on a daily basis. So that's a lot of economic activity, a lot of people's lives affected. A senior White House official
told reporters yesterday that it was early to tell how long it will take to rebuild the bridge, that according to Senator Ben Cardin, that's the Maryland Senator Ben Cardin, he said that it's critical to the state's economy. The port handles cargo that it's double the ports of Mombasa and Durban combined, just to give you a little context of how much economic activity takes place here in Baltimore.
Right. Jackson, thank you very much. Hope, those who are still out there will be found alive. Thank you, Jackson. Jackson Vunganyi reporting live for us from Baltimore, Maryland. Senegal's president-elect Bassirou Diomaye Faye is vowing to fight corruption, rebuild institutions and unite the country as he prepares to assume office. His victory in last week's elections follows a political crisis sparked by outgoing President Macky Sall's failed attempt to postpone the vote. VOA Nairobi Bureau Chief Mariama Diallo is in Dakar and has this story.
In his first public address, Senegalese President-elect Bassirou Diomaye Faye thanked his supporters and pledged to bring solutions to some of the problems he says his country is facing.
I will govern with humility and with transparency. I will work to get rid of corruption in all sectors and will work toward rebuilding our institutions.
Faye says it's time to bring calm to the country after outgoing President Macky Sall tried to postpone the February elections until December, plunging the country into a brief political crisis.
National reconciliation and rebuilding our fundamental ways of living together. The pre-electoral crisis we lived through cost some people their lives and many were jailed. We hope to turn the page and reconcile people's hearts and the Senegalese people.
Sunday's official election results have not yet been published, but Faye's supporters say they are satisfied with what they have seen so far.
We were hoping to win with over 70% in the first round, but it seems like we are at 57%. It's only preliminary numbers, but we hope that number will be even higher.
We lived through moments that almost pushed Senegal into chaos, but thank God everything is back in place now. We had a transparent presidential election. Candidate Diomaye Faye was elected with a comfortable margin. What we must do now is reconcile the Senegalese people, as Diomaye said in his speech, and transform the country's economy.
Earlier at the ruling party's coalition headquarters, Amadou Ba, the coalition lead candidate who lost the election to Faye, told reporters about a conversation he had with the president-elect.
He told us he congratulated him, he's happy for his victory, and he wishes him well.
I wish him success, and may God accompany him as he carries out his various missions and goals for our glorious nation and for the well-being of our population.
As Ba's supporters try to digest their candidate's loss in the first round that saw 17 candidates vying for the top job, tensions of the last few months seem to be fading away and being replaced by the hope that Senegal's reputation as a beacon of democracy in the region will soon be restored. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Dakar, Senegal.
For more on what to expect from President-elect Bassirou Diomaye Faye, I'm joined live via Skype from Dakar, Senegal, by Hawa Ba, a Senegalese political analyst and bureau chief of the Open Society Initiative for West Africa. Hawa, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther.
Now, we know that President-elect Bassirou was in prison, actually, and then he was voted overwhelmingly by the youth. But what kind of changes are Senegalese expecting under his leadership?
First of all, I think it's worth noting that as much as the election of Bassirou Diomaye Faye is a rejection of a political system, a kleptocratic and a violent political system, it's an endorsement of a project, what Pastef call a project, that has been gradually developed since 2004, and that places restoring democracy, restoring transparency, enhancing the management, the virtuous management of public good at the heart of what the political system, the political offer that they have. In this, the youth has very high expectation. In light of the rampant poverty, joblessness, the first the first expectation from the youth is job creation.
Let's
it's
jump
restoring
right.
Exactly.
Job creation is going to be a big deal. It's everywhere, especially in Africa right now. But I want to jump to opposition politician Ousmane Sonko, who has also been in jail several times, and he supports Bassirou. What kind of role do Senegalese expect Ousmane Sonko to play in the new government?
I think the main role is really restoring Senegalese democracy, restoring value-based governance and ruling, restoring what is the bedrock of Senegal democracy, which is which are strong institutions that deliver on citizens' need. It is expecting that Sonko will rule in tandem with Diomaye, even though Diomaye is the president-elect, but Senegalese people are expecting that Sonko will support him in terms of policy formulation, but also in terms of defending the economic and political sovereignty of Senegalese people.
Hawa, thank you very much. Senegal's democracy has been, defended very well by the institutions of the courts there. Thank you, Hawa. Hawa is a political analyst and the bureau chief of the Open Society Initiative for West Africa. Still to come, we'll tell you about battery swap technologies in Ghana. We'll be right back.
This week on Straight Talk Africa. 2024 has been labelled a super election year. 64 countries worldwide are holding local or presidential elections, including 16 countries in Africa, as well as the United States. Some see this as an opportunity for African countries to strengthen democracy. Is the pendulum swinging towards democracy or authoritarianism? Join the discussion with me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
While harmful cultural practices such as female genital mutilation or forced marriage are well known, most people may not be aware of breast ironing, a practice where young girls have their breasts flattened to deter unwanted male attention. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will discuss why certain communities carry out such a painful practice and its health consequences for girls. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, Cameroonian student Christian Kwangang, the former president of an association for students from sub-Saharan Africa in Tunisia, has been arrested without apparent reason, according to NGOs in the northern African country. The student group says Kwangang was on his way to renew his residency when he was arrested. Chad President Mahamat Idriss Deby says 7 Chadian soldiers were killed in the Lake Chad region when their vehicle hit a landmine in a region where jihadist groups including Boko Haram and an Islamic State offshoot are active. And Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema has announced that the Southern African nation has agreed to a historical deal with private creditors holding $3.5 billion worth of Eurobonds, lifting a key hurdle in the long-sought restructuring of the country's debt. Electric vehicles can lower pollution and save drivers money, but in Africa, uneven access to electricity is a significant barrier to their success. Battery swap technologies in Ghana are offering a solution. Senanu Todd explains.
Linda Mate grew up with a love for motorbikes. She says she wanted to challenge the stereotype that bikes were for men. However, her first attempt at riding one almost got her injured, so she quit.
Like you can easily get your leg somewhere bent because of the exhaust pipe. When you're getting down and you get off from at that side of the exhaust pipe, yeah, you get yourself bent.
In 2019, Mate was introduced to electric bikes, reigniting her childhood interest. She has since been working as a bike courier in Ghana's capital, Accra. She says electric bikes are easier to operate than gasoline-powered motorcycles. The challenge, she says, is keeping her bike charged.
But with the kind of work we do, the deliveries and stuff, if you charge at home and you're out in town and you run out of battery, then you have to go back home and charge. No.
Instead, Mate swaps low batteries for fresh ones at these stations run by Ghanaian battery company Kofa. Motorcycles play a vital role in Africa, moving people and goods, especially in areas with limited public transport and road infrastructure. Industry experts say e-bikes are cheaper to run and pollute less than traditional motorcycles. But the World Bank says about half of sub-Saharan Africa is without electricity, and even places with electricity would struggle with a big increase in electric vehicles, according to Kofa founder Eric Nygaard.
They are struggling with this in the Western world. So when you plug, imagine everybody comes home at 5 o'clock and plugs their cars in. I mean, what it does is it creates an extreme electricity demand spike, which is quite intense. And so putting that pressure on the current grid systems across Africa would not work.
Instead, Kofa's batteries store electricity from solar panels and the national grid. Users can swap depleted batteries at any time at locations across the capital without putting pressure on the national grid. After 2 years of operation, Kofa swaps about 200 batteries in Accra daily.
And these batteries are almost like packets of energy that you could use anywhere.
Kofa says their batteries can also be used for household appliances and even power generators when the national grid goes down. The company says their batteries could potentially feed power back into the national grid to support the Electricity Company of Ghana, or ECG.
And so let's say you're in an area of Accra that they're going to do like ECG is going to shut it off. Potentially we could support the local distribution network and say we will provide energy from our station to you.
Kofa says they hope their technology will always make energy accessible and drive a quick adoption of e-vehicles in Africa. Sana Nutod, VOA News, Accra, Ghana.
The UN General Assembly has passed a resolution establishing a global agreement to develop trustworthy and secure artificial intelligence systems that promote sustainable development while respecting fundamental freedoms. Technology correspondent Paul Ndiho joins us now with more. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. The UN has highlighted the need for a balanced approach that promotes innovation while addressing the potential harm that AI may pose to society and the environment. I spoke with Philip Tigo, a Kenyan technology and public policy expert, for more insight. A lot of people are talking about artificial intelligence, but very few people understand it. Maybe help us explain that.
Artificial intelligence, as you know, is basically machines being able to do things that human, or has capability of what human beings can do. I was fortunate to sit with the Nobel Peace Prize, Maria Ressa, and she's the one person who's put this very clearly, that artificial intelligence is neither artificial nor intelligent, right? So it still builds from human beings. And so where this technology is going, in my view, is that, of course, it keeps on changing. The artificial intelligence we had 3 years ago is not the one that we have now, right? In terms of generative artificial intelligence, it means AI that actually is able to generate its own new knowledge, new outputs, but based still on some key foundations. And that in a way, as you know, is a problem, because if it's generating new outputs from an existing data set, or what we call foundation models, Africa and the Global South are not necessarily in this space. I always say that the three things or the three key elements or three pillars of AI is data, compute, and talent. If you use that as a matrix and to anchor that around how our current development path is sort of being shaped, you find that we are really not investing in these three things.
There's so much talk about regulation. People don't want to touch it. There are people who say AI should be regulated. These new technologies that should be regulated. But there are those who say, wait a minute, you shouldn't even regulate this because it's still in development. We don't even know. You don't want to stifle this innovation. What do you say to those people?
First of all, is to understand where we are in terms of regulation. At the global level, of course, my work with the UN Artificial Intelligence Advisory Body is trying to come up with an AI governance framework anchored within the United Nations International Human Rights Charter. So that's one. We definitely need regulation. But I think for us, we need global regulation because technology is not applied in one country, it's applied globally. So I think for me, let's have that as sort of a baseline. And I still believe the United Nations is still the best place to do this, also because you're talking about regulating a technology that some countries do not own, don't have capabilities, have no idea about it. So we need that equalizer. Secondly, regulation of anything is about ensuring that it does no harm. It's about security, it's about responsibility. So we also need to be very clear about the regulation and also what part of the artificial intelligence are we regulating. You can't regulate everything, right? So if AI is supposed to ensure that my computer turns on, why do I need to regulate that? But I need to regulate parts of artificial intelligence that have serious potential for creating harm to humans, society, and planet. We have to be very clear. So again, that's the context I think regulation must happen.
There are people who think that, yes, it's going to bring about some significant changes, but there are also people who are very skeptical about the use of some of this technology. What would you say to those people?
This technology is disruptive. Let's agree on that line. If it is disruptive, it means people have genuine fears because then they will be disrupted. And the disruption in this case is economic, right? So I have a genuine fear, for example, if I'm going to lose my job in 2 months, then I'm genuinely afraid. But also, people are genuinely afraid because it's moving too quickly. Honestly, it's moving too fast. Think about it. Sora in the last 3 weeks, right? ChatGPT 3.5 in the last 3 months. ChatGPT 4 is already in testing in a premium level. People are talking about GPT-5 within the next 6 months. So, I mean, honestly, I sympathize and I agree with everybody that there's a genuine cause to be afraid because it's moving very quickly. But then remember that with any new technology, it takes away opportunity, but it creates more opportunities. So that's where I want us to spend some more time. How do you ensure that you are future ready? Because believe me, there are more opportunities. Think about the people who the people who used to write with the pen, then the printing press showed up. I'm sure the pen people will be panicking right now, but when the printing press showed up, there was more jobs, right? So basically, that's the donkey cart people to the car, or to the bicycle to the car, to the plane. There's opportunity. So, and I'm talking to Africans on this particular, please. Africa is the continent that is poised to benefit more from AI.
Philip Tigo is a Kenyan technology and public policy expert. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for the latest technology news. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.